When I was in my early 20s, I ignored some of these financial tips, and I really wish that I would have made it a priority to follow them early on. And if you're in your 20s or your 30s, these financial tips will save you thousands of dollars over your lifetime, so don't ignore them. And at any point during this video, if you agree with one of these points, hit the like button. Let me know which tip that you would also add to the list, because I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well. Hey, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Tim Fraticelli, and on this channel, we love talking about personal finance and ways to improve your financial health, especially if you're a physical therapist like me. But you don't have to be a physical therapist to be interested in these topics. So if you're interested, subscribe for new videos like this each week, and let's dive right into the 4 tips that you should not ignore when it comes to your personal finances. Okay, that first tip is to make a budget and to stick with it. And I'm sure you've heard this advice before, and it can seem like a no-brainer, but there are a lot of people in their 20s and their 30s who know that they should make a budget, but they never get to that point, or if they do make a budget, they just don't stick with it. I want you to start thinking about a budget as though you're going on the offense instead of constantly being on the defense, living paycheck to paycheck, fighting to cover all of your bills before the month is over. And whether you're making $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year, it's easy to think, well, I track my spending in my head and I make a good amount of money, so I don't really need a budget. Look, if you don't like the idea of a formal budget because it feels restrictive or whatever, I would challenge you to do a quick assessment of your spending over the last couple of months. Take a look at your bank account or your credit card statements and tally up that money that you've spent in different categories like food or shopping or eating out or Amazon. And I want to make sure that you keep track of how much you're saving as well, because paying yourself should be considered an expense or an outflow. And if you're not making that payment to yourself into your savings accounts or retirement accounts or other investment accounts, you really need to look to see if some of your other expenses are eating away at that money that you could put towards your long-term savings goals. A lot of times we can simply make a few small adjustments and just plan ahead to give every dollar that we earn a job before we spend it. And that's the whole idea behind a budget. When you can spend your money on paper before you spend it in person, you have better control of where your money is going. So don't ignore a budget. And if you're curious about the budgeting tool that I recommend, be sure to check out You Need a Budget. I'll link to it in the description below, and I'll even do a full review of it if you're interested in learning more about it. Okay, number 2 is to max out your Roth IRA. I know we're all in different financial situations, and I'll use my career as a physical therapist for example. So a physical therapist will start their career earning about $65,000 to $75,000 a year, and like most jobs, your benefits package will usually include a 401k or a 403b if you're working in a nonprofit organization like a hospital. Now, if your employer offers a match, you'll definitely want to take advantage of that match, especially if they're willing to contribute dollar for dollar or 50 cents to the dollar up to a certain percentage of your pay. This is common for a lot of physical therapy jobs out there, but there's another type of account that often goes ignored for years, even though I'm sure you've heard of it before, and that type of account is called a Roth IRA. Now, the reason you should not ignore a Roth IRA in your 20s or your 30s is because the earlier that you contribute money into your Roth IRA, the longer it has to grow and to accumulate interest. The money you put in that account has already been taxed, and the interest that you earn on your Roth IRA will grow tax-free, and then eventually it can be withdrawn tax-free in retirement. It's one of the best retirement savings accounts out there, especially for younger investors who have time on their side. So of course, be sure to take your 401k or 403b match first, and if you have additional money to save, max out your Roth IRA each year, because the younger you can save, the more money that will compound over the years that you can draw out tax-free in retirement. Okay, on to number 3, and that's to contribute to an HSA or a health savings account. One account that often gets ignored by people in their 20s and their 30s is a health savings account, and it's really unfortunate because health savings accounts are amazing accounts that provide huge tax benefits and savings when you need it the most. As long as you're covered by a high deductible health plan, you can open an HSA, which is a type of savings account that lets you add money tax-free in order to pay for qualified medical expenses. So not only does the money go in before taxes, it can grow tax-free with investments in your account, and then also be withdrawn tax-free to pay for things like your deductibles, co-payments, co-insurance, and other health-related expenses that you have. Now, there are some rules for eligibility, and the maximum that you can contribute in 2020 for an individual is $3,550 and $7,100 for a family. Now, the good thing about your HSA is that it's your money and it stays with you and it grows throughout the years, but unfortunately, it can be really easy to ignore the importance of saving for large expenses like medical expenses until it's too late, which is why it's really important to think about establishing your health savings account early on and simply adding a small amount to it each month, because it's going to grow a lot faster than you think, and you'll be really glad that you had the money when unexpected or even expected medical expenses pop up. Okay, and the fourth tip you should not ignore in your 20s and your 30s is this. It's that cars will keep you broke. Look, I get it. If you started a new job recently and you need reliable transportation, it can be really tempting to get a different car and then to take on a car loan. And this is a mistake that I made early in my 20s, and it's so easy to try to justify the expenses of a car payment. And obviously, it's great if you can buy a car with cash, but the majority of people in their 20s and 30s, it's going to be common to find a car that's a few years old and then to have a $300 to $400 a month car payment. And the reason why a car payment like this will keep you broke is because you're not just spending $300 to $400 a month on that car payment. You've got a ton of other expenses with that car throughout the year, including your taxes, registration, insurance, and maintenance. And you can easily add on an additional $200 to $300 a month on top of your current car payment. It's so easy to think, well, I can afford to make a $400 car payment because I make $5,000 a month. But after you've paid your taxes on your income and you take into consideration all the additional expenses surrounding that car, it's not uncommon to see people spending 15% to 20% or more on their after-tax income on that car. And we're talking $8,000 to $1,000 a month just on transportation. And I'm not against you having a vehicle or reliable transportation, but I really want you to think about the cost associated with that car and what you're giving up because of that car payment. Are you ignoring your savings? Are you having a hard time putting away $200 a month into a Roth IRA, but you have a $300 car payment? It's very easy to ignore this area of our finances, and it's even easier to try to justify the cost of a new car or a used car payment. But just be careful that you don't ignore your other financial goals because you have a car payment that's leaving you broke at the end of the month. All right, so those are just a few financial tips that I would encourage you not to ignore in your 20s and your 30s. I'm curious to hear what your tips are, so let me know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the video next week.